Welcome to the Dr. Lori Marvis podcast. I'm Dr. Lori Marvis, and today I'm so honored to have Marcy Madrid from Midland Health. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been an incredible story of yours, but I just want to talk to people and let you know that you're also VP of Planning and Marketing at Midland Health, which is it sounds like it's a very large organization of healthcare system. And we can get into that as well. But you have some incredible story, and I really want to make sure that we share your story of healing. But you also talk about your faith and how that's such an important part of that. But can we go back to kind of how you ended up in Texas and especially Midland, and just a little bit of, so people can get a flavor of West Texas, and
Sure.
tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I'm from Orlando, Florida. I went to college in Tennessee at Middle Tennessee State University. I graduated with a bachelor's there with a focus on mass communications and TV radio broadcasting. Moved back to Florida and was looking for my first TV job. And for those that know anything about the TV business, you have to start out in really small markets to kind of earn your stripes and make all your mistakes until you can go to a bigger market. So I had the choice between Topeka, Kansas, where I had to be ready to face extreme weather conditions on my own as a one-man band. There's Columbus, Georgia. There was a place in Florida, Panama City, Florida, and there was Midland, Texas. Those were my options as far as my first job offers. And being from Orlando, Columbus, Georgia, Panama City were really close, but the job wasn't as attractive as the one in Midland, Texas. It was a #1 TV station, and it was a really cheap cost of living at that time, go figure, compared to now. And so I made the jump, and I was young, and it was exciting to try something new. I'd never been west of the Mississippi, so I packed all my stuff up and headed to West Texas from Orlando, Florida, back in 2004, I believe it was. And I've been out here ever since. I met my husband at the TV station I worked at for a number of years. He was the chief photographer, and I was the reporter and anchor. So it was really cliche, but it worked out for us. And I've been here ever since and have really loved it. And I moved into healthcare about 4 years after I had moved here. I was getting married, and I wanted to settle down into a more stable career and something with more predictable hours and better insurance, honestly, as a young girl about to get married and thinking about a family. There was an opportunity here at the hospital, and came here, and my position has just grown ever since.
Wow, fantastic. So can you give us an idea of what type of community Midland is? And I mean, people understand West Texas, it's ranches, it's oil fields, it's dry, windy.
Yes, and considering the climate, it's a wonder anyone lives out here. But once you start to learn about the culture and the people and all the other nuances in this area, you start to understand why people put up with the weather and the climate to make a home out here. It's a really unique place to live. There's such a spirit of progress and just a desire to do something better than we've done in the past and move things forward and come up with new ways of doing old things better. And it's just such a neat area out here. And there's so much philanthropic support for things that matter, for things that help people, for projects and initiatives that are going to prove to do something to improve the community. And so what you find is that it's really easy to start movements here. We have more nonprofits, original nonprofits here than most other communities. There's some statistic out there, and I can't remember what it is, but we have so many nonprofits in our community. Wow. And it's just an example of how much support there is, financial support for organizations and different groups that will reach out to help the community, to help other people in the community in need. And it's really a neat place to live because of that support and that progress and that desire to move forward and do better. And maybe it's an old ranching philosophy. I don't know where it comes from, but it's just the spirit in our community. People are friendly. People roll up their sleeves to help others in need. Coming from Florida, if someone's broken down on the side of the road, you just try to get out of the way and keep going forward. Out here in Texas, especially West Texas, if someone's broken down on the side of the road, there's at least 5 people that stop to help them change the tire and, get them back on the road and whatever it may be. It's just a different spirit and a really neat culture to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. When I got married in 1993, and we had moved, my husband was active duty at the time, and we were stationed at Goodfellow in San Angelo, which is also West Texas, just to let people know. And we had to live in New Mexico for a little bit because he was stationed in where was it? No. We were moving. I take that back. We were in San Angelo. No, we were in Ohio, moving back to Lubbock. That's what it was, because I was about to start medical school, but then I got pregnant with number 3. That's what it was. And we were in Clovis, where he was stationed, which is eastern New Mexico, where I grew up. And I was going to school in Lubbock, but we were living in Lubbock, and he would drive 100 miles one way each way. When we first moved there, we had just been going to our church for like 2 weeks, and then we bought a house in Lubbock. These folks came, took their whole Saturday. It's the same my philosophy as West Texas, so nice. And they packed up all of our stuff, moved us in, and then my husband deployed for 5 months. But that was just, for some strangers, we've known you for 2 weeks, but 3 families helped us. I mean, that is the spirit of West Texas.
Yes.
And I do miss that. It's an incredible place. You're absolutely right. But going back to your story, so you were married and then coming along in life, then what happened?
I've been at the hospital now since 2004 and really passionate about my role here and doing something that matters and helping people in a journey towards health. I've been in marketing and public relations for the majority of the time here, looking at community health outreach. And it wasn't until about 2014 that we really started talking about population health management and proactive management of our own population here, and how can we really move the needle. In 2014, we had reestablished our mission to lead healthcare for Greater Midland with a vision to become the healthiest community in Texas. And that really kind of refocused what our purpose was and what our goal is. To lead healthcare for Greater Midland means we are taking the role as the healthcare leaders of our community. So everything that impacts the health of our community, whether it's a service we offer or not, like mental health, if it's something that's causing a barrier to health in our area or a healthcare need, and we're going to bring the right people to the table, we're going to be leaders of what we need to do to fix it, to create a better system. And so that moved us more towards this a much more external facing view of what healthcare looks like. It's not just what's happening between the 4 walls of our hospital, but it's this whole health system view, and it's our community view, and it's things that are happening before people end up in our hospital, and what resources they have access to, and what information they're getting about their health. So we started looking at these things in 2014 and really looking at how can we better improve the health of our community, and how can we move the needle on making us the healthiest community in Texas. Well, I think it was about early 2015 that we had a couple physicians that were interested in this for their own purposes, who had gone to one of Dr. Stoll's conferences, and I think it was an ACLM conference he was working on, and had started learning about lifestyle medicine, and brought it back and told a couple other physicians whose minds were blown, honestly, that this information was out there, and they never heard it after decades of practicing medicine and med school. And so they really became passionate about the message and invigorated in their own practices, realizing that they can have such a greater impact on their patient population just by delivering this information and letting people know that they have a lot more power than they think they do at the end of their fork or within their lifestyle choices. Because so much of healthcare has been delegated to hospitals and doctors now, and just our culture and the way that insurance has ran, for the past couple decades, people have taken less and less responsibility or ownership of their health and just kind of put it in the hands of the doctors and hospitals to figure it out and make me better and patch me up and send me home, and I'll come back when it's broken again. And that's a lot of us at a disadvantage and thinking that we don't have any control over our health, that it's not our responsibility. It's the healthcare system's responsibility to make me better. And I go to them when I'm sick and they'll patch it up. And after years and years of that type of philosophy, people begin to feel helpless and hopeless when they end up with these diagnoses and these health issues, because if they didn't have any control over it, then they can't do anything about it. And they're, at a complete loss of control or ability to impact their health from that mentality. So going back to how this has progressed is we have these physicians hear this information, share it with others, and it's like, wow, people have more control. I, as a physician, had more control over my health than I realized I did. And they started sharing the information and saw how it impacted their own patient population and said, we really need to make sure the hospital administrators know about this. They need to, if they're going to be making community healthier and really trying to move the needle and be leaders of healthcare, then they have to know this information. They have to be sharing this information. And that's where I got brought into the whole concept around lifestyle medicine. It was around mid-2015, and I was brought into a wellness committee task force meeting where these physicians that were sort of emboldened and empowered by this message came together and sort of called a meeting with some administrators. I was brought in from the planning, community outreach, marketing, PR side of things, so I could help promote, put on events, and share information. Our CEO was there and a few others. So we started talking about this and really looking into the research and realizing all the studies that have been done and the patients that our physicians had already impacted through it. And it was just the ball just started getting started in 2015. And from a planning perspective, where I was coming from and marketing and PR, you couldn't deny the evidence and the research that was already out there. And as I'm promoting our mission and our vision to make our community healthier, we would be remiss if we left out this really important idea of lifestyle medicine and food as medicine, because there's so much impact that people can make just by their daily decisions, and people need to know that. So I got kind of pulled in, and it made sense. I think my first task was to help plan a live viewing for Plant Pure Nation. It was the year Nelson Campbell came out with Plant Pure Nation. He was doing sort of a countrywide tour, and those physicians that were really engaged in the beginning had contributed to his campaign, and we were on the list of host cities that could host a live viewing and have Nelson and Kim come out and talk about it. So that was sort of my initial thing. I was helping to plan that. We started talking about a lifestyle medicine center and what that would look like, and we started exploring the CHIP programs and other things. Well, around the same time, this was in this late summer, early fall of 2015, I start noticing a numbness reappearing in my legs. And I had twins in 2014 and had a C-section. It was my first C-section, my third pregnancy. And I'd never experienced numbness like that. Well, it went away and came back. So I called my OB. They said, that's not normal. Call a neurologist. Went through the MRI and all those tests, and they confirmed pretty quickly that it was MS, multiple sclerosis, which completely took me, by surprise, because up to this point, I've always been healthy, as compared to what culture's definition of health is. My blood pressure, my cholesterol, my glucose, all that stuff when I did annual checkups always looked good. I worked out a lot. I ate a lot of lean meat and low carbs and, followed all that standard idea of what it means to be healthy. I was active. I was, thin. I'd lost my baby weight. I was visually looked like I was in good health. So to think that something could happen to me, related to my health when I was a strong, healthy 20-something, it really took me by surprise, and it punched me in the gut.
Wow. And
so for those that have received diagnoses like this, like MS or whatever it may be, it's very depressing, to sit in a doctor's office. There is no hope in that, there's support groups. You can join a support group and join with other people that are facing this, and maybe you can encourage each other. That's about all the hope you get within a doctor's office diagnosis, especially if they don't have any clue of plant-based nutrition. That's what I had. I left the doctor's office with this new diagnosis and a prescription pad full of new medications I was supposed to learn to know and love and understand the side effects for. I had a 24-hour nurse that called me every couple days and checked in on all new symptoms I was having. It was like understanding what this new life was going to look like. At the same time, I'm learning about lifestyle medicine and plant-based nutrition and this thing's the hospital. And so I'm going home and talking to my husband, we're dealing with this defeating diagnosis and this hopeless, you have to be in a wheelchair in this many years and this is what's going to happen. And, it's sort of they write your story for you. It's like you all of a sudden lost complete control of your life and your future, and now it's restricted to a prescription pad and what this doctor says is going to happen to you over the next 5 or 10 years. And you believe them because they've gone through years of medical school to be able to tell you what's wrong with you and what you can expect from it. So it was really defeating, but husband and I were just talking about it, and he's like, well, how come you can't try this lifestyle medicine stuff, and why can't it, work for you? And I'm like, oh, it's mainly like for diabetes and heart disease and all these food related disorders, because that was my initial impression. Well, thankfully, I think it was really divine appointment. As I became more involved in the movement, I was able to meet people like Nelson Campbell, who was able to tell me about his dad, T. Colin Campbell, and some of the research that he was aware of, and introduced me to research from Roy Swank and what John McDougall's been up to. And then I was able to meet people like Dr. Stoll, who from a position of authority, from a physician perspective, give me confidence in the research and the trials and the things that were out there related to MS, and how diet and lifestyle can impact it as well. So as my husband and I are talking through this and thinking through this, and honestly, more than anything, praying through it, we really felt like this was not coincidence. It was not random happenstance that this is happening to me at the same time that I'm being brought into this movement and introduced to all these experts on the topic. So we prayed through it. After a month of taking medication, my hair's falling out, my vision is blurry. I'm having employees drive me home from work because, I'm so out of it. I can't see, my head's pounding. I feel horrible. I'm exhausted. After a month of taking medication, I got worse when I started the medication. So we're praying about this, and we just really felt like this is what God was calling me to. And, we'll give it a shot. And 6 months down the line, if it doesn't work, maybe we can go back and try a different medication. Well, that was in October. We sort of made that decision. I made the switch November 1st, somewhere around the beginning of November, after taking meds for about a month. Right before Thanksgiving. It was great timing to switch to a plant-based diet for the first time. But I was encouraged by the idea that maybe I could regain some quality of life and get rid of these symptoms that have taken over my life. I remember braiding my daughter's hair before a soccer game, and my hands were just shaking, and I was holding back the tears thinking, I've got 3 little girls at home. We've got several daughters, but 3 that I actually fix their hair still and get them ready. I'm like, I've got these 2 little girls that I'm supposed to braid their hair, at least until they're in high school for all their sports. And I'm already failing at it. And this can't be the future. I don't want this to impact these little things that mean so much to me. So we made the switch, and through a lot of prayer, and my husband was really encouraging me. And he was probably one of the biggest supports because, he's very spiritual too. And he really felt, the leading of the Holy Spirit saying, this is what you're supposed to do. So that gave me confirmation that this was the right thing. It is no small thing to go against a doctor's orders, a doctor that has years of experience, that is very knowledgeable about different things. And when you have very, very little experience or knowledge on a certain topic, and to say, no, I'm not going to do what you're telling me to do, even though you say, if I don't do it, these are all the bad things that will happen to me. I'm going to go this other direction. That takes a lot of courage.
Wow.
And honestly, it took a lot of prayer and confidence. And I think if I wouldn't have had those voices of authority of other physicians in my life supporting me, and then my husband saying, this is the right thing to do, I believe it too, and we'll do this together, that gave me the confidence I needed to go off all my meds and start plant-based. And that's what I did. And my physician, and he didn't know what to do with me. So he referred me to an MS research center in Dallas, because he just didn't know how to manage me if I wasn't going to follow his standard plan, which is understandable. So I switched over in November. I got off all meds. I cried my way through Thanksgiving, mostly on the inside, waited till I left the groups of people to cry on the outside. It was a really difficult transition. And I realized at that point how deep those social and cultural and emotional ties are to food. This was more than about food. This was about wanting to be socially accepted and and wanting to do what everyone else does and wanting to go along with the flow of things and not be the one that's standing out and the one that's different and the one that's bringing your own plate of food to an event. I didn't realize how much I cared about what other people thought until I had to go up at Thanksgiving dinner with my own plate of food and explain to everybody why I was the weird one in the group. So when you talk about a deeper meaning or deeper struggle behind the food transition, the social and emotional and cultural transition is a lot harder because those roots go a lot deeper. And just being okay with being different and knowing what you're doing is the right thing to do. And it's the right thing for you.
How did you get courage to face those, just out of curiosity, that Thanksgiving? What did you tell yourself to make that entrance and speak that? What did you say? Because a lot of people struggle with that.
Yeah, it was really knowing my why. And I think that's why you can't just do it because it's the popular thing or because it's what someone told you to do. You have to know why you're doing it. And my why is because I didn't want my hands to be shaking as I was braiding my daughter's hair. I didn't want my vision to be so blurry. I couldn't take my kids trick-or-treating on Halloween night because I couldn't see the street. I mean, that's how it was that October. It was so bad. I wanted to be young and vibrant and strong to be able to raise my kids and take care of my family. My poor husband had his life flash before his eyes when at 8:00 at night, I'm passed out on the couch and our twin 3-year-olds are running around and, our kids are, wanting mommy to do the things that mommy always does. And I just knew that God had called me to something bigger than my life essentially being over in my 20s and my value and worth and purpose being cut off so fast. I just knew there was something more and something he was calling me to more. So that was really my why. I knew I had to do this for my family, for myself, and for the purpose that God's called me to take care of myself and really look at what I can do. I believe a lot in prayer and miraculous intervention, but I also believe that there's a lot of things that God wants to hold our hands on, that he needs us to walk along beside of him in the journey. And we can't just delegate all the healing and everything to him. Sometimes it's a lesson that he's trying to teach us and a journey that he wants to walk with us on. And I believe that's what this was. He could have healed me instantly, but he chose not to because there was a deeper lesson and a refinement of our lives that we've gone through by me going through this journey. So really thinking of food as my medicine. And that food on Thanksgiving Day, my first Thanksgiving didn't taste good because it didn't have any salt or butter or cheese, which I had lived off of all my life. And I was used to those flavors. My taste buds hadn't changed, but that medicine made me feel horrible. And if I didn't have to feel what that medicine made me feel like, and I didn't have to deal with the long-term consequences, I was willing to choke down some dry meatloaf and bland green beans and mashed potatoes that didn't taste like anything but air. And tofu pumpkin pie that was a sorry excuse for one that I've since learned to do a lot better. I mean, that's what I had while everyone else had this buffet of options. It didn't taste very good, and I just tried to eat until I was satiated and remind myself of my why the whole time. And it was difficult. And that's what got me through the day and helped me stick to the decision. After we left the Thanksgiving dinner or whatever, we were there for most of the day. We were at a gas station getting a newspaper. My husband had gone inside and I was sitting in the car and I just broke down. I was crying and I was like, Lord, this was so hard. I just didn't realize how hard it was going to be different, which is odd because I've always been a person of strong faith, and you pride yourself on being different, because you choose to do the right thing and take the higher road, and the road of the righteous is narrow, and we're called to be set apart and called to be different, and all these things that we tell ourselves as Christians that, we're supposed to be different. But in reality, most of us like to be just like everyone else. And we like to be those comfortable Christians that kind of fit in line with majority of population. And we do the things that most other people do and that are still socially acceptable. And that was when I really realized I want to be like everybody else. I don't want to be different. I don't want to be the one in the room that everyone's looking at like, what are you eating? And why did you have to do that? And does it taste good? And just being faced with being the different one in the group was difficult. So I was praying through it, and the Lord dropped Romans 12:2 in my heart, which is, do not conform to the behaviors and patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's where you'll, find the purpose that he has for you. And it was such a peace that came over me when I realized I'm not called to be like everyone else, and that's okay. And I don't have to do what everyone else is doing, and that's okay, because if this is where I'm going to regain my health and be the mom and the wife and the community member that I'm called to be, it's okay if that makes me different. And if being the same means jumping off the same cliff of disease that everyone else is jumping off of, it's okay to not be the same as culture. So I found a lot of peace in that. And from there on, it was constant prayer and scripture and just strength in my faith that helped me get through many other social and cultural and emotional issues that I found were tied deeply to my food choices. The reason I ate, binged on things were tied to stress that was uncontrolled and bitterness and a desire to fit in and things that I didn't even realize were issues in my life.
I mean, what an amazing journey, right? So you'd never even dreamt that eating these foods would take you on this emotional, mental, spiritual journey. And
yes.
So you actually had, when you had your MRI, so you had lesions, correct? And can you tell us where those lesions were, and then how did the rest of it go through Christmas, New Year's, and then your full transition and healing?
Yes. So I had lesions on my brain and my spine, my thoracic, cervical, spine, and had lesions all over, and it was confirmed through a lumbar puncture of the MS diagnosis. So that was I think that MRI was in September around my diagnosis, before I started the medications. And I started eating in November. Beginning of November is when I switched off all medications and went completely plant-based. They referred me to the MS Research Center in Dallas, and it took me 6 months to get in. So my first appointment with them wasn't until April, and they wanted to get an updated MRI before my appointment. So it was in April of 2016, about 6 months after I had started plant-based, that I went in to have a new MRI and then had a checkup with my docs. And I remember in April, we went in and the doctor was saying, he put up my old MRI and my new MRI side by side on the screen. And he's like, you've got to see this. And he zoomed in, and I think the images were in that ACLM video, but he zoomed in and he said, you've got to take a look at this. And he showed me the lesion that was in my brain in the diagnosing MRI, the one in September of 2015. And then the same area of my brain in April, my follow-up MRI, and the lesion had all but disappeared. And he said, and I was just kind of looking at it and not understanding what MRIs look like. And he said, you've got to understand what you're looking at. This kind of regression I've never seen in a patient who wasn't medicated. He said, this is remarkable. And then in my initial visit with him, I had told him a little bit about what I was doing with plant-based nutrition. And he was like, yeah, we'll watch it. And then we'll suggest some medications, after a few months if we feel like symptoms come back. He wasn't a big believer, but after seeing the MRIs, it's interesting. My husband will say, I feel like we should send him a bill because I'm saying, now, what are you eating again? And well, can you eat this? And well, can you not eat that? And, what about this? And why can't you eat this? And started diving more into the questions. And he's a researcher, so he was really interested in what was going on and what I was doing different. And it was so neat how it sort of shifted, and he was much more open to it. It was a blessing that I ended up with this particular physician at UT Southwestern, because not all of them have this type of research progressive mentality, but he in particular did, and he's put me in a couple trials. He's been open to this. He and his PA there are really open to plant-based nutrition now. They've actually done a documentary recently on a group of their patients who have switched over completely to plant-based nutrition. They're looking at maybe getting it online or in Netflix. They've had patients who have transitioned and had great impact. So since then, their office is actually actively promoting plant-based nutrition and lifestyle medicine to their patients as a treatment option. And it was so interesting. In one of my follow-up visits, they said, after you see the research and the information out there and you see the impact it has on patients, how can you not recommend this, or at least give your patient the option to do this when you see how big of a change it can have. And that was so inspiring to me to know, finally, there's a physician that gets it. You know, you hear so many physicians that say, oh, my patients will never do that. They'll never stick to it. And I've heard our own physicians in our health system say, I'm not even going to waste my time mentioning it because they're not going to be able to do it. It's too hard. And they completely take away that option from that individual. And to hear my physicians, it was a PA that was actually at the office at UT Southwestern, to say, you know, how could you not at least give them the option and let them decide if they want to do it or not, but to keep it from them knowing it's a viable option and it can have remarkable results. You know, it's malpractice to not at least give them an option. And so it's enlightening to see what they're doing with it and how they're incorporating it more into their. What's your doctor's name at UT Southwestern? Dr. Akuda. It's in the MS Research Center. And then Katie Wright is his PA. And Katie actually goes to Dr. Stoll's conferences and is very open to it. And it was her idea to do the documentary on their patients. But again, Dr. Akuda is a researcher. So I think he does more research than really patient care. So the fact that he was just open to watching me as really a guinea pig and seeing what happens and just being interested in the transition and seeing the progress and kind of jumping on and being supportive of it has been really helpful. Because for those facing diagnoses like this, especially if you're dealing with medication, you have to have a physician involved in your care. You can't just go rogue and try to figure it out all on your own when there's medications involved. So trying to find a physician that is at least supportive, even if they don't know about it, but can support the idea or refer you to someone that knows more is so important. And that's hopefully what maybe your physician audience can learn from this. You don't have to be a dietitian. You don't have to be well-versed in how to, treat a patient in plant-based nutrition, but if you can at least be knowledgeable about the research and the evidence that's out there, so you can give your patients the option and then refer them to someone that can counsel them from a dietitian perspective, or one of the physicians that are doing specialty plant-based counseling and to try to titrate medications, whatever it may be. Give your patients that option. But there's people like me who it completely changes your life, and you're willing to go all in and 100% and make the sacrifice, because it's a matter of life and death. It's a matter of quality of life and no quality of life. Being there for your kids or being in a wheelchair on the sidelines, and there's a lot more people than physicians probably realize that are willing to make the sacrifice for that type of end result.
And then it turns into, you change your kind of your paradigm shift, right? It's not a sacrifice anymore. Now this is the life that I was meant to live. So it's not a sacrifice anymore. It's actually, it's thriving. It's your tool to thrive. So
yes, it shifts. It's a sacrifice at first because it's so countercultural. Right. You have to relearn your behaviors and relearn how to cook. But then when you get on the other side of that hump, it's like you thrive and you love the energy you feel, and food has more flavor, and we enjoy gardening now and tasting tomatoes out of the garden and how much flavor they have. And so you definitely shift after a while. You just have to get through that hump. I think Dr. Doug Lyle has a great talk on getting over that initial hump and getting through the first part.
Absolutely. So you have 4 children?
6 total.
6? Oh yes. My goodness. So so you're like Stoll's.
Yes, yeah. So we are kindred spirits in the buses we drive around with all the kids in it. I've got 4 young ones at home and 2 older ones in college.
Oh my goodness. So you have 2 older kiddos and then 4 little ones. Now, so everyone at home is plant-based, obviously, even including your husband?
So my husband's on board. My kids were standard American diet their whole lives up until 2015. The younger ones, the twins, they just turned 4 this year. They were younger when all this started, so they're much more ingrained in it because we were kind of able to force them to eat certain things. My boy is 9 and he is all athlete and all boy. And then I have a 7-year-old girl who's also very athletic, but more lean and open to things. We rarely, if at all, cook meat at home. And I try to incorporate, as much of my food into their diet as possible. We do some transitional vegan meats for them sometimes if they just need those comfort foods. And I try to control what they eat at home as much as possible. But it's a challenge when you have kids in school. You know, we're both working parents. My husband owns his own company. I work for the health system. So they go to school, and there's all kinds of temptations and opportunities at school to eat a bunch of junk food. And they have family that they're really close with, and cousins who they spend a lot of time with, and aunts who they, you know, go over with. And not everyone eats like we do. And they go to pizza parties and get introduced to other foods all the time. And what we try to do is educate them as much as possible, control as much at home as we can, when we can. And even if we're having to eat out, sort of control some of those decisions. But most of all, just educate them on what's a good choice and what's a bad choice, and why do we make good choices, and why do we sometimes make bad choices, and how it's okay, but just know that, you know, what you're doing, and that it's not good for your body. And I know it tastes good and it's fun, but you just got to make sure you're not doing that a lot, because it'll, you know, start to hurt your body. And thankfully our kids are all really athletic, and they all want to be pro soccer players. So it's easy to kind of weave in the, hey, you know, professional athletes have to really steward their bodies and eat well and be healthy. And you can't do that if you're eating Cheetos. You know, you can't be a healthy, successful professional soccer player, you know, eating a sad diet all the time. So we try to work in lessons that are at their level and that make sense, and let them make those decisions as much as possible without controlling it. I think every year they get a little bit more and more on board. But, you know, so for my 9-year-old boy, he was 7 when this started. 6 or 7 when this started. So that's 6 years of ingrained way of thinking, and telling him he needs to eat his meat for protein, because that's what I thought. And downing jugs of milk because he needs calcium, to now just recently trying to tell him, okay, mommy lied the whole time because I didn't really know. And here's the truth, and here's what you should do. And just trying to transition them without being a bully about it, and without being overbearing and forceful to where it's, they just, you know, they want to rebel as soon as they go out of our presence. So I know that was a really long answer, and I know some people go 100% cold turkey with their kids. We have some friends that have done that, and it's been successful for them. We are really ingrained in a family, a bigger family unit. My husband has 5 sisters. His mom is an incredible resource to our family. The families are really close. And I think it makes it more difficult when you can't just be on an island and make those decisions as a family, and no one else is going to impact you, than when you're really ingrained weekly, sometimes daily, with a larger family unit. There's a lot of shared meals, a lot of cousins. You know, it makes it a little bit more difficult. And they're not homeschooled. You know, those that I know that have their kids completely plant-based are also homeschooled, so they don't have to deal with the temptations at school and the opportunities to cheat when mom and dad aren't around, because it's all around them. And they're kids. They're not emotionally mature enough yet to always make the best decisions.
Yeah, and they're younger. So mine were 13, 15, and 18 when we switched over. So now they're 24, 22, almost 20. So at home, what we did, I went overnight, literally. And my husband's like, you're still cooking? Okay, I'll eat whatever. So at home, strictly plant-based, threw everything out. But when we'd go out to eat, we'd let them order, you know, what they wanted. They ordered the hamburger or the steak or whatever.
Mac and cheese. Trying to get kids off of mac and cheese is like getting a drug addict off of.
You know, the cheese was hard. And what was interesting, though, over the course of a year, because I took it upon myself to educate them very well about everything. And they started, instead of ordering the meat, they'd order tofu. And I was like, well, that's interesting. And then over the course of time, my daughter took a little bit longer because she's my oldest. And but what's interesting, she's now engaged, and her fiance went plant-based, and now she's suddenly, you know, in the last year, really, she had been plant-friendly, but now she's all 100% on board. And my little one, what was interesting, he all of them are athletic as well. He made it, did very well his freshman year during cross country, and so he was about 2 years into it, and his coach was always giving me a hard time about the plant-based stuff. Because, I mean, I was telling everybody. And I lived in a little western town in Colorado at the time. And what was interesting, so Gabe didn't make state, but one of his teammates did. So they took Gabe and another young man, and they went to the stage just to cheer on their teammate. What happened, though, he decided, well, mom's not around. I'm 15 years old. I'm going to eat hamburgers and pizza and ice cream and all this stuff. Gabe came back home on a Saturday afternoon. He's like, Mom, I'm just really tired. I'm just going to go to bed. I'm thinking, well, they were up all night the night before, teenage boys. And he didn't come down for dinner and just sleeping through. I got a phone call from him at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning across the house. And I'm like, Mom, I really don't feel good. I'm like, so I'm running across the house. And we're talking, it's horrible abdominal pain. And it's just hanging around his belly button, and it starts migrating to that right lower side where his appendix is. And I was like, Gabriel, what did you eat? And he's like, no, it wasn't that bad. But, I had I had ice cream and all this stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to kill your coach. And so I was like, we have to go to the hospital because of what you've done. Because I don't know if this is not your appendicitis. So what we did was we took him to the ER, called my thank goodness, because I worked at the hospital, and they were so kind. The surgeon came in because even morphine didn't take away this pain. He had a normal white count, and then it was elevated. The pain isolated to that right lower side. The ultrasound was normal, but they actually admitted him because of the severity of the pain and seeing this white count go up. And just for observation, and it took 12 to 14 hours or so finally for the pain to resolve and his white count to drop back down to normal. And I said, Gabriel, do you see why we don't eat like that?
Yes, lesson learned.
That kid is converting kids now to eat plant-based. But you know what was really interesting with my teenagers was they like being different at that point. So we made it so cool in this little western Colorado town. It's like, I'm the only vegan that's walking around. This is fantastic. So yeah, but
it's funny because my 7-year-old daughter has had that happen too. She's a typical girl who loves chocolate and sweets, and she would hide stuff in her bedroom. And since we've transitioned them to eat more like this, she'll go to birthday parties and eat the ice cream and the pizza and everything. And she'll come home and she'll be sick. Like, she'll be so sick to her stomach. And it's happened a few times now. And every time it happens, I tell her when she chooses to eat that, I was like, this does to you, and it's going to hurt, but everyone else is doing it, and all, it's a party. And I think she always forgets how bad it makes her feel. And then we'll get home and she'll stay in bed and she'll be sick and she feels like she's going to throw up and her stomach pain. And I'm like, you know why you feel this way? And she's like, I know I shouldn't have ate all that junk, but sometimes they have to learn their own lessons. But I'm glad we're at least knowledgeable enough to teach them, how to make choices and how bad choices have consequences. And then hopefully as they're not around us, they're not just doing things because we're putting our thumb on them and making them, but they know the consequences of those actions. So.
Yeah, my middle one, who's 22, he's a senior in Florida. We lived in Florida as well. But he wants to start his own plant-based company. Cool. So it's really cool to see that ripple effect. So speaking of how your faith and the ripple effect, what an incredible experience to now know that this doctor who you were referred to is now a researcher and incorporating with his other patients. I mean, what must that feel like to know that you're giving hope and just your story is transformational in other people's lives, the people that you'll never even know?
Yeah, it's been interesting. When something first happens like this, your first question that you try not to ask, but it's always in the back of your mind, especially as a person of faith, is why, God? Why me? Why this? Why now? Why am I having to go through this? And oftentimes he's gracious with us, and we don't always get the answers to those questions immediately, usually not. But if you're patient with him, and if you continue asking and trying to learn and listen for the answer, and not just in your anger yell why and then stomp out of the room like our kids do, but really wait for him to answer and listen for him to kind of teach you and lead you through the answer, which sometimes takes longer. Those things will often be revealed and brought to light. And that's what, we've really seen over the last couple of years is the opportunity that has come out of this, the purpose. I mean, just, we all felt like we had a deep purpose and, aside from all this before, but what a new purpose this is giving us to be able to share information with friends and family and clinicians and many others. I mean, the doors that this has opened to be able to minister and encourage people to is amazing. My husband has become one of the biggest advocates. And, you know, one thing that you can always find in common with people, unfortunately, nowadays, is some type of sickness or disease that they or their family members facing. And it feels like so many conversations my husband ends up having with people, and me too, end up going to a disease diagnosis they're facing or their family members facing or a sickness. But it's such a neat thing to be able to carry this testimony and this information that we've learned with us, and sort of use our scars and our experience as a teaching tool, because we're able to bring so much hope and encouragement to other people who, where before we're like, man, that stinks. Well, we'll pray about it. We'll pray for healing. We'll pray for you, which is valuable. But now we can say, you know what? God created our bodies to heal themselves if we'll just stop damaging them. Let me tell you how to stop damaging your body and walk through this healing process with God. And that is an amazing message that we've been able to share with people and encourage people and give people hope back. People are so hopeless when they're faced with these disease diagnoses that are just so rampant and widespread. And to give that hope back to people is encouraging. And, you know, working with clinicians in UT Southwestern and has been really encouraging that they're sharing with others, but just all the people in our lives and the health system. I get people referred to me all the time that are facing MS or have a family member that are facing MS and want me to talk to them. And, you know, I'm glad, because there's probably, you know, 50 some odd people that have been referred to me over the past couple of years that probably wouldn't have had any other source of hope or encouragement in their diagnosis if I hadn't have been through my journey and was able to kind of hold their hand along in their journey. So it's so meaningful. It kind of brings a new perspective to what really matters in life, and the things that really inspire you and encourage you to keep moving forward and trying to make the better decisions, because your journey is often a story that will be told to someone else, and how you can impact their life with your decisions and the story that you make really show you that it's so much bigger than just you. Your decisions, both good and bad, often have such a larger ripple effect to the world around you. And that's why we should take such responsibility and ownership over trying to make the best decisions possible.
And I think also it's a great testimony of your faith and how God made circumstances align that you would see this at the time that you did, early in your diagnosis as well, right? So you'd have even better odds of beating it. And I think what you said is key when you share hope with someone. So, you know, for those physicians who think, oh, I'm not going to share this with anyone, nobody's going to change, you know, their diet. I don't think they understand that when a physician speaks to a patient and says, you know, there is an opportunity that you may be able to eat your way out of illness, that gives them hope. And so I think we've become a hopeless health system, right? It's not just sick care, but it's a hopeless situation where we just give medications and off you go. But there is something powerful that when, as a physician, you speak with authority to a patient and say, hey, let's talk about plants, let's talk about the science and the healing aspect. But that gives them hope and inspires them. And sometimes that's all they need to make the leap. And if they know that you're supporting them, so many people will make this transition. I mean, I have countless patients over the last 6.5 years that have just done just that. And I think you're exactly right. You're giving them hope. And then it's highly addictive. I think on my side, I know you probably feel it too, it's highly addictive to be a part of someone's journey to healing. It's like veggie crack.
Yes. I mean, it's just encouraging. Like I said, it just broadens your perspective of what really matters in life and expand your view of the world beyond just your bubble and what's happening in your life and what you can accomplish today or this week, and really helps you see the connection that God's created us to have with people all around us, where we're doing this together and we're encouraging and carrying people along with us. And no man was ever meant to be an island, you know, or do by themselves.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you, it's a beautiful story, and I still want to respect your time. So I know we're coming across the point that we agreed to stop. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's going to be very inspiring to many people, I'm sure.
Yes, I appreciate the time. And like I said before, if anyone gets anything out of this, I hope they realize food is so important. It's such a cornerstone in any kind of health progress or trying to achieve wellness. We've downplayed it so much over, past couple centuries, and now hopefully there's an increased emphasis on how big of an impact that food really has on us, and just the miraculous creation of our bodies and how they can actually heal themselves after years and years of abuse. Stop the abuse and healing happens almost instantaneously, and that's just amazing. But I'm a big believer in, and I tell this to everyone I talk to, is it's a lifestyle issue. Food is really the key. It's a gateway. It can be a gateway drug or a gateway to healing. And, it can be a slippery slope to sickness. But if you kind of bring that key even to health, you start realizing the reasons why you eat the things you do, and the reasons you eat as often as you do, and the reasons you overeat, and the reasons why you indulge. You start realizing all the emotional connections we have to food that are just unhealthy. And we start getting to such deeper aspects of soul healing and who we are as people, and the things that are dragging us down every day that we're sweeping under the carpet and ignoring and shoving a Snickers bar in our mouth, trying to medicate it and keep moving forward. And when you get to those deeper issues and really start looking at forgiveness and bitterness and anger and strife and need for accomplishment and find value in what other people, all these things that we struggle with as a culture that is just destroying us, when we start getting to those deep down issues that we're using food to medicate, my goodness, the revelation in your life, the quality of life and health that you have, body, mind, and spirit, is just incredible. And it's such a great way to live, when you can be free from all those things that weigh so many of us down that we don't even realize sometimes. It really is a spiritual life, and it's a great way to live.
That just a quick story too. When you speak about the anxiety and the depression that's so rampant across the United States, and it's very sad. And when I've had patients who are on medications and they transition to plant-based diet, like you said, you have to work through, you have to go deep, right? You have all this stuff you're stuffing down, and to get to the good stuff, you have to go through the bad stuff that you've been pushing down on top of it. And, you're changing your gut, you're changing the microbiome, which affects the good feeling hormones that are being made there. And people are coming off these medications because they feel good, they feel better, they have more energy. And one woman in Florida, just a sweet woman, she goes, she'd been on Prozac for over a decade. And she goes, I wasn't sad or depressed, but she goes, but I didn't realize wasn't feeling anything. And she goes, I was just so flat that I had missed. She was like, now I actually understand joy and what it's like to feel happy and joy. And then, I feel down, but it's not the down that I was before. And that's an incredible thing. So I think there's so much in people's life that we're, like you said, if we're doing with food and then we give them medications to try to numb the pain that the food is causing and all the other things, and that we're not dealing with. But you are so on top of a huge iceberg. Just barely took the tip of that, but you're exactly right. Right. So wow. Well, thank you again so much for your time.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.